listen.
Never in my life associated the word boring with baseball.
We know what's up.
Me? Yeah. Famous? Yeah.
And I'm like giddy over there smiling like, we're about to win this shit.
Did everyone give you crap? Give me a good host story.
I'm not picking it up.
We both love the game.
We talk about it every day.
Getting on baseball.
Having some popcorn, you're fooling around your phone.
I'd have to wait in line for 3 hours.
Hang on, because it's about to be a wild ride.
There's no human being I'd rather be talking to right now on the planet than JP Ricciardi. Fact. Of the JP Ricciardi Red Hot, there's nobody who has a better podcast in the world.
Well, I appreciate that.
I mean, I think I broke you into the podcast world, didn't I?
You kind of got me off the schneid, and you led me down the path.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope you're enjoying it. You're doing a good could tell that could tell from that very first one, it was there that you had something. And JP, like from that podcast, I actually quoted you, maybe it was yesterday. It was from that. It was talking about trades, and basically I'm going to paraphrase you, but you said, when Billy Beane used to say, worry about who you're getting, don't stress out about who you're giving up, right?
Well, basically, I used to tell Billy that, and Billy was a gunslinger, so he didn't need much persuasion, but he would get caught up in it sometimes and think about it. And I used to tell Sandy the same thing. When you're the assistant coach, you got to be that guy. And I would tell him, listen, let's not focus on who we're giving up. Let's focus on who we're getting. We're happy to be getting that guy. So let's go forward from there. And really, when you have that mindset, it makes things a lot easier.
But so many people don't look at that.
Well, it's funny. I was on a podcast earlier today, and I think what's lacking in today's game, I think what's lacking in front offices today is you can have the youngest guys you want to have running teams, the most analytically driven guys, whatever you think, the most hip guys. I have no problem with that. The problem I have is they don't surround themselves with guys with experience. And I think that's one of the reasons you don't see a lot of trades today. Everybody's afraid of what I'm giving up, but they don't have those Bill LaJoys. They don't have those Brian Sabians. They don't have guys like that are telling them, hey, this is a good trade. Let's not be afraid to make this trade. And I think what else is lacking is they evaluate everybody today based on straight, flat out numbers. And there's no heartbeat. So once again, if you don't have a professional, experienced guy with success that has had pelts on the wall, they're not able to understand sometimes what a good trade is and what a good trade isn't. And I think when you look at every good organization, they have that one or two or sometimes three experienced guys, whether they're older or whatever it is, they're experienced with pelts on the wall that have had some success. And I think that's what's lacking. And I don't understand, what other industry or business do we live by and have that doesn't value experience? So when you ask those questions, like why there aren't a lot of trades, or I think organizations overvalue their prospects. Go back and look at it. How many prospects become what you think they're going to be, right? But we get caught up. Oh, he's the 5th ranked prospect. That doesn't mean anything. It's to me, when they get to the big leagues and they become good players, then you say, I had a really good draft. If they were the first, second, look, if you get a guy in the 17th round and he ends up being a good player, hey, that's a heck of a draft. Like I look at Jared Duran, that's a great draft. 7th round, that's a heck of a draft. But the first round, he better be a halfway decent player. So I think we've got to be able to evaluate our own players and be able to be honest with people in the front office. And I really think it's lacking today.
So there's a lot of things I want to pick through there. Number one is I think that, to your point, it's not that that a lot of these guys overvalue their prospects, which, listen, I mean, everybody does that probably, right? Because you're drafting them, you're developing them, you're seeing the best in them, whatever. But the talent has to come from the identifying the guys that are going to be good. And understanding, we're going back to, I remember JP, John Sherholtz used to be really good at this, right? Where he's like, oh my goodness, like this guy is the best. It's the best, the best. And then he would trade him because he knew he wasn't the best. He identified which guys were the best. You hold on to them and then you go from there. But I think that you have more GMs now thinking, there's a million guys. Oh, you never know because they don't want to be burned, JP. They don't want to be burned. If
you have that experienced person around you who can be objective, I think one of the best things, when I was in Oakland and Sandy and Billy were running the team and I was their right-hand guy, they allowed me to be objective. So I could go to them and say, I don't see that. Or maybe we should think about this, or have we thought about that? And they always allowed me to have that opinion and to be able to, it caused them to think a little bit too. And I think a lot of people don't want to be pushed today. They don't want to be challenged. Why do you see that? Why do you want to do that? But there's not a lot of give and take in front offices now. It's basically whoever's in charge. They don't listen to a lot of people. They don't include a lot of people. And I think they get very defensive because now it's their evaluation that's on the line. And I think the best guys, I think of Theo. Theo had good people around him and he listened to those people. And to Theo's credit, he got broken in by Josh Towers, who was a scout. And I'm not saying scouts have all the answers. And I'm not saying the evaluators have all the answers, but we work in an inexact science. Wouldn't you want to trust somebody who's been through the wars a little bit to have an understanding to be able to say to you, I've done this in the past, it didn't work out, I wouldn't go down this path. So I really think some of the organizations, if they're a little bit more open-minded and allowed some guys to be objective and not just be like a little lemon and following with everybody and have a little pushback, I think you'd get a little bit more in the way of trades.
How much do you think it also is having to win the trade by 70, 80% instead of 51%?
What do you care? I mean, I go back to, if you're getting back what you want, you're getting a good player. Listen, the whole idea is they get what they want and you get what you want. And you're both happy about the trade. I traded for Jose Bautista, who ended up hitting 300 something home runs for the Blue Jays. His name's in the Ring of Honor. And I traded him for nothing guy, but at the time, that's who Pittsburgh wanted. So I definitely won the trade, and I definitely traded for a guy who's now on the Ring of Honor in Toronto. But my whole objective wasn't to see if I could screw the Pirates.
Right. You wanted that guy, they wanted your guy.
And I wanted that guy to do well because then I can always do business with the Pirates. So sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. But if you're afraid of getting burnt in the trade, you really shouldn't be a GM.
Another thing too, JP, as I see, is this obsession with getting back 4 guys for 1. And this is why, I in Boston, Breslow made this deal for Jansen, right? The catcher.
Yeah. Yep.
And they gave up 3 prospects. And everyone's like, oh, well, maybe you overpaid. I'm like, no. I mean, this is what Dave Dombrowski always caught heat for in your industry. Oh, look he gave up 4 guys for this one. And, well, all right, who cares? You got the one guy that you want. And tell me of the 4 guys who are going to be in the major leagues, and if they do make it in the major leagues, are going to be as good as the guy that you got. And so, but you know what I'm saying? I think this is so many.
Listen,
I see so many people doing this.
Well, it's like when people say, well, we control this guy. So I remember Alex Anthopoulos, when he was my assistant, Jay, we control this guy for 5 years. Jay, I said, Alex, no offense. He's a horseshit player. We control a horseshit player for 5 years. Big deal. Who cares? And I remember we made the Lyle Overbay trade and Doug Melvin said, we traded Dave Bush for Lyle Overbay. So we had the deal done and Doug Melvin calls me back and he says, we think we're a little light on our end. Is there anything else you can do? I said, well, what are you looking for? He goes, well, you put Gabe Gross in. Now, Gabe Gross was the #1 pick by the prior regime, and I like Gabe. He's a wonderful guy. But I said, you know what, give me 10 minutes. So I asked the guys in the room, there's about 5 of us at the winter meetings, and I said, you guys, they want Gabe Gross. A couple guys said, no, no. I said, guys, we're getting Lyle Overbay back. We're getting a 280 hitter with 50 doubles and a Gold Glove first base, and he drives and runs. We're going to let Gabe Gross get in the way of that? Called him back and said, yeah, you could have Gabe Gross. So, I think people, when they make that trade and they think they're getting numbers, I think they forget that people actually look back and see who those players were. So, like you said, who cares who you're getting back? I mean, it's irrelevant to think like, oh, wow, 4 players for 1 player. Who cares?
But I think they're covering their ass too, though, JP, honestly.
Yeah, but what are you covering? You got 4. Now you got those players, and if they're not good players, you're sitting there saying, what am I going to do with these guys?
Yeah. Well, so when you look at what's going on now, and I'm going to ask you the perspective, which I don't have, which is being a GM on the eve of the trade deadline. But when you look at what leading in, we hear so much about the cost is too prohibitive. The cost is too prohibitive. You can't, the month out it's impossible to get deals done. Well, is it? I mean, I think the impact of doing an early deal, it can be like a make or break thing for a team, right? So bite the bullet, get uncomfortable, right?
Well, listen, maybe I should have started this off this way. A lot of this is controlled by ownership.
Yeah.
So they may say to you, we don't want to go past our budget. We don't want to go past the budget we said. But I got to believe that any organization, and you could pick any one of these teams, randomly that you think are going to be a playoff team. If you take Philly, if you take the Yankees, if you take Baltimore, if you take the Dodgers, I might be missing a team or two. Cleveland, they know they're going to be in the playoffs. So the advantage they have, they can now build their team to win in the playoffs. The other teams are trying to get to the playoffs. So I would almost think that the teams that are in these higher positions would be a little bit more aggressive if they had needs to say, hey, I'm going to get to the World Series because of this move. And I look at Baltimore and I know they have all the resources to get the Scooble kid from Detroit. That's 2 years, two years and a couple of months of control of a dominant left-hander. So this goes back to what we talked about earlier. Are you in it to win it? Or are you in it to just say we're good enough? And I think that's where the rubber hits the road with a lot of front offices today.
All right. So you said that you bring up Scooble. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I like fake trades.
Yeah.
And, all right. So Scooble, this is the time to do it. You got the timeout. You got the control and everything else. You're pretty sure that he's going to be an ace. Baltimore needs an ace. Baltimore needs a controllable ace because Corbin Burns is going to be a free agent. If you're a GM, do you do Jackson Holiday, number 1 prospect in baseball, a deal involving Scooble?
You're asking me.
Yes.
And I'm a GM for how many years has he been in Baltimore?
Who? Elias?
5 or 6?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? You got a chance to win the World Series?
Yeah.
That's a difference maker.
Yeah.
I'm going for it.
Okay.
Because if with the team Baltimore has right now, if they're not a World Series team within the next 3 to 4 years, that window is going to close. And the Orioles aren't going to be drafting first like they have been for the last X amount of years. They got one hell of a team. So you lose Jackson Holiday and you maybe lose another prospect. You still have really good players coming. And now you trot that guy out in the first game of a series, and you can bring him back in game 5 in a short series. And then in game 7, you can go 1, 3, and 7. With the team I got, I might not be this good again. There's no guarantee Jackson Holiday is going to be Bobby Witt Jr. I think he's going to be a good player, and that's not going to happen overnight either. Right. So you're going to go through some growing pains with him. But I think one thing you have to be conscious of is when you have the opportunity to win, you have to take the opportunity to win. It doesn't happen. It's so fragile. Go back and think of those great Blue Jay teams in 92 and 93. they struggled to win the World Series. It wasn't like they dominated. They had a battle and scrape and claw, and they were loaded. And you think of all those Red Sox teams, they had a grind. I mean, very few teams, except for the Reds, they sweep the Yankees in 76. I mean, very few teams go in and breeze through the playoffs. It's a grind. So you're only going to do it if you got really good players. And in Baltimore's case, I wouldn't hesitate to make that trade.
Do you subscribe to the dynamic or the landscape of how baseball is now? We've had the Diamondbacks, 84 wins, get in. Obviously the Rangers squeak into the playoffs last year, win the World Series, division winners getting bounced early. If you're in a position, if you're the GM of a team right now and you're sort of on the cusp, like I don't know, you're Pittsburgh, you're Arizona, I'm coming up with terrible examples.
Oh, I know.
If you're the Red Sox, knowing how the dynamic of the format now is lending itself, if you get in, you have a chance. Do you keep that in mind when you're at the trade deadline?
100%. I mean, look at, and maybe I'm talking totally foreign here, but I've always been under the understanding that we're supposed to win. The game is about winning. And if you've got the opportunity to win and you don't take advantage of it, the Red Sox are a perfect example. They have played outstanding baseball this year. A credit to the players, a credit to Cora. You've seen Duran develop right in front of them. They have good young players coming. The Red Sox are in a really good situation. But if they don't take advantage of trying to get to the playoffs with everything that team has done, it's a wasted year. But they've made some trades now. They're trying to help. They're trying to put that team over the hump. So I give them a lot of credit. Some of the other teams haven't done anything. And you sit there and say, well, are you really that serious about trying to do something? The Red Sox are at least trying. So I don't know. I don't think anybody's that good to predict when you're going to be good. The Red Sox, let's say the Orioles. Next year, what if Gunnar Henderson blows an ACL? God forbid. Okay, that's a big setback. What if one of their arms goes down? There's no guarantee that you're going to win. So you have to take advantage of when you're winning. And these teams that are winning now, like you said, listen, I wish this format was when I was a GM. I would have made the playoffs 4 times.
Yeah.
But, we won 87 games one year, went home. The Cardinals won the World Series before winning 84. So I don't know. To me, winning is so precious, and it just does so much for your organization.
How much, when it comes to this time of year, how much is reading the room? When I say reading the room, I mean reading your team, reading the clubhouse. It's no secret that players and managers, they want to add. It's not complicated. But you also have to read the room. You have to read the room in terms of how important it is to add to get them going. And also you have to read the room in terms of adding the right player, because if you add an asshole, then that can go the other way too. So how important is that from the GM seat of reading the room?
It's kind of a 2-part question. I'll answer it this way.
Yeah.
Your job as a general manager is to build a team in the offseason. When you get to spring training, you probably know 20 to 23 guys that are going to break with you. It's the other 3 or 4, whether it's injuries or whatever, that make the club. So you do all your work in the winter. The team comes in, now the team, and we'll use the Red Sox as an example because they're a local team. They come in and they overachieve, and they play better than anybody expected. They got a great manager who knows how to win games. He's kind of turned the game on its edge a little bit by running a little bit more because no one can defend the run. That's a whole nother story we can get into, but he's taking advantage of what he can do. As a general manager at this point in the season, now it's your job to contribute. And Breslow's doing it. He added a couple of pitchers. He's doing a couple of little things here and there. So if you go down that clubhouse, and I've been a part of a lot of adding, a little adding, and no adding. When you go in that clubhouse and you don't do anything, those guys look at you like, hey, haven't you noticed what we've been doing? Haven't you seen how hard we've been playing? We've been living up to our end of it. What are you going to do to help us out? And it really is very deflating. Now, the second part of that question that I'll answer is just to bring a guy in could totally screw up the dynamics. And Cora has a nice thing going right now with how he's platooning a guy here, playing a guy here. He's pushing all the right buttons, and everybody's getting enough playing time. No one's getting overexposed. So if you bring a dynamic in that all of a sudden breaks up that little bit, that can be detrimental to the team. So to me, if you're going to add, it has to be a need and it has to be a better player than you have there already.
It's interesting you say that. So as we tape this, Justin Turner was traded to Seattle. A lot of people thought this was what the Red Sox needed, not only on the field, but potentially in the clubhouse. A team that had, I think, one position player over 30 years old. Hey, Justin Turner, he was there. He was a leader last year. Not even a question. But it's a different team. They've built up a different dynamic. You know, the let's say a Jaron Duran, he is taking on a leadership role, which he didn't have last year. So just to say, oh, well, here, you got your leader. You'll put him in, Justin Turner. And I don't have an answer for this. But it's not just like a cookie cutter thing. This guy is a good clubhouse guy. He's a leader. He's going to come in and lead. Well, if you already have the foundation in place, that might throw everything off. Am I explaining this correctly?
I follow what you're saying. And once again, this goes back to having experienced evaluators and experienced baseball people around you. Someone who is with the team and understands what the pulse of that team is. And someone who can say to whoever's in charge or have the rapport with the manager and say, I don't think that's a good guy to bring in here. I think you got a really good thing going here, and this guy may rock the boat. So I think it's so important that you do your homework as to what kind of guy you're bringing in and how you're bringing him in. If you're bringing a guy in just to be a leader, I don't see a lot of upside with that. You know, we had Michael Kadire in New York. We traded for Michael Kadire. We signed Kadire. I can't even remember how we got him. I think we signed him as a free. Yeah, we signed him as a free agent because we lost a draft pick. But Kadire was terrible for us all year. One of the best guys I've ever been around. Great guy, great clubhouse guy, was great all the way, through the whole year, but he wasn't productive. And after a while, when we got around this time of year, his not having an ability to play, he just really became like a cheerleader. We weren't really getting much out of Kadire. So it was kind of a wasted spot. And he knew it too. He knew he just wasn't the same player that he was before. So I think you got to be very, very careful. You have to have the pulse on your team before you bring somebody else in, I believe.
Oh, it's a good point. So on the eve, you're sitting here on the eve of trade deadline. You like you said, you've had all different situations, buying a lot, buying little, not buying at all. What is it like for you? Like, do you sleep?
Yeah, I think it's a little overrated. I think at some point, pretty much by 12 o'clock, West Coast teams have an idea what they want to do, unless you've got something going with them, but it's not like you stay up till 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, you pretty much have an idea of what you want to get done and how you want to get it done. And listen, if it's coming down to this time and you haven't done anything, the only people you're going to deal with is the Billy Beans of the world, the Alex Anthopoulos of the world, the John Sherholtzes of the world, the Dave Dombrowskis of the world, the Kevin Towers of the world. And there's not a lot of them left. So you're not going to all of a sudden spin and call the Cleveland Indians and say, hey, would you guys do this? Because they have a process how they do things. So I don't think any trades are going to start tonight. I think the trades that end tonight probably started 2 weeks ago.
Did you have any deals that were right up against it?
From a trade standpoint?
Yeah, like that we got to get the facts in.
Yes, Scott Rowland. This is a great one. So we traded for Scott Rowland. And it was it, I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, so we traded for Rowland, and the fax machine in Toronto broke. So you had to fax it in by a certain time. And I'm losing my mind because I spent getting this to the finish line. I had to talk a guy out of a no trade, a long process. And they come to me like 10 minutes before, we can't send the fax. I said, what do you mean you can't send the fax? The fax machine broke. I said, well, go to another department. So we called the league and we said, listen, we're having trouble getting the fax through. they said, we got to get the facts. If we don't get the facts, we can't okay the trade. So we ended up going down to like ticketing, which was closed. We had to have someone open up ticketing and get in there and send the facts through ticketing just to get it through on time. So that was nerve wracking because there was guys involved that we had to have them okay there, no trade.
That's a great story.
Oh God.
The facts. The trade deadline hasn't been the same since faxes went out the window. So who do you like in the trades that have been made so far? Is there any that jump out at you? Obviously, Dombrowski he knows he has a good team, and when Dombrowski knows he has a good team, he's like, well, whatever it takes. So he goes out and gets the closer, he gets the outfielder, maybe he'll get someone else. But is there any other deals, or maybe you like those deals? What do you like so far that's been done?
I like getting Paxton and I like getting the pitcher from the Pirates because I think they need depth. I think some of their arms in the bullpen are on fumes a little bit, which I think in all of baseball they are at this point of the year because the bullpen's used more than it's ever been used. So I like that move on a very small scale. I like what Dombrowski has done. I like what the Orioles did getting Elfin, that's going to help them. That's going to give them depth on the mound. I like what they've done. Most teams have done small things.
Well, you have
Rosarena was a shot in the dark because he's been so with the bat, but they're struggling for offense so bad. That's kind of a shot in the dark. I take my hat off for them for at least addressing the fact that they need some offensive help.
Let me ask you this, JP. So, we talk because as you're talking, I'm thinking about contracts and control and Isaac Paredes of Cubs, and he's got control. And so the Cubs are, they're really doesn't look like they're in it, but they're getting controllable guys. Speaking of controllable guys, you have the guys in Toronto, Vlad Guerrero, a year and a half out. I remember when Mookie was a year and a half out, they really debated hard. This is the utmost value that we're going to get. How do you view that? How do you view the Vlad Guerrero Jr. situation?
Okay, this would be my take on that. If Vlad Guerrero and Bichette have not signed long-term deals by now, they're probably going to take that last year and see at the end of it where they lie. So I would be surprised if those guys get a long-term extension, not because they won't offer it to them, but because I think at some point they're going to test the market. They've gotten this close.
Right.
I think Bichette more than Guerrero. The team has underperformed. The team has not been good. So having those guys, they haven't been good. If you're going to sign Guerrero to a long-term deal and he's going to be the cornerstone, there's not a lot around him. Their farm system is not very good. So you're going to have one good player surrounded by a lot of players. After a while, that doesn't add up. So I look at the Juan Soto trade. I think Mike Rizzo did a great job. He resupplied his farm system while they were still bad, where they're still drafting up top, and he's going to get an influx of players. I think the Blue Jays could have done that with Guerrero and Bichette. Now, look, they might still do it. I'll be surprised if they do. But I think the Blue Jays, the way they're run, they're going to sell off all the expiring contracts or guys that they don't think are going to be around next year or going forward. So I think they may have missed a really good opportunity. And the other thing is, if you look at the division, the Yankees are always good. The Red Sox are going to be good. Tampa Bay's always competitive. And Baltimore is going to be good for another 4 or 5 years. So you have to look at this. Am I going to be able to compete with these teams in the next year or two? And if I'm not doing it now, what makes me think next year I'm going to be able to do it? So I would have taken the opportunity to try to get as much influx of new talent as I could.
Yeah, and I don't want to be simplistic about it, but I agree with you. I think that what you have to do is you have to say, okay, Vlad, let's say Vlad, if this isn't our best offer, it's pretty close to it. You have to read what they're saying. So here you go. This is what we think we're going to offer. And if you get the sense he's like, no, 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 thanks, then do exactly what you did. But this is the negotiation, to your point. We've so far down the road, the negotiation point time for this is gone. It's gone.
Yeah, this was 2 years ago. This should have been done. They
Right.
should have gone to him and been proactive and tried to extend him at that point. Now, maybe they did. I don't know if they did or they didn't, but that would have been, for me,
But JP, make your bet, make what you feel is close to your best offer.
Right.
Like you say,
Then
negotiate. Don't slow play it anymore. That's where the Red Sox with Mookie, they screwed up, which they kept slow playing it, right? Instead saying, hey, we're gonna get uncomfortable. This is the best we can do. Here you go. And if it,
Well, yeah, my experience has always taught me when you're proactive, you got a better shot. You know, we were proactive a couple of times in Toronto, and it really helped us keep the player. You know, one of them being Roy Halladay, and it was smart of us to do it at the time. We didn't wait till he was near the last year. We waited. We got him when he had 3 years left, and I think I don't know who represents Vlad, but I can't see Bichette not testing free agency. I'll be surprised if he doesn't. You know, and like I said, I don't know if the GMs tried to do it up there or not, but you know, they're traditionally a very slow moving organization, Toronto. They're not quick. They think things out. They're pretty methodical. So that's going to be interesting because I don't see them being a good team going forward in the next few years.
All right, last thing. So right now, the way I look at it, I think it's the Phillies versus the field. That's just like how I feel, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I felt like they were rolling last year, they get derailed at the last minute, but they're even better this year. But if you're not going to put the Phillies to the side, what team for you is the most intriguing about potentially getting hot and going on maybe the type of role the Phillies went on last year? Is there a team that you like say, okay, they're going to go on a run?
Okay, yeah, you're probably not going to want to hear this, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Yankees.
Oh no, I'm with you.
I'll tell you why. They've got two front end guys in Rondon and Cole. And our game, and this is what's kind of messed up about our game, and this is why I don't like that extra wild card. If you're the 1 seed in the NBA and you play the 8th seed in the NBA, that team has no chance of beating you. And mostly in hockey, unless the Bruins, you know, they had the getting beat by the Panthers. But mostly in hockey, it's the same way. Baseball is the one game where if I've got 2 quality starters, I can knock you out in the first round. And that's the only thing that's scary about some of these teams that are, you know, just about going to make the playoffs. But when I look at the big picture, it wouldn't surprise me if Cole and Rondon, barring any injury, those 2 guys could carry you. And now if they make a trade for a third guy, and you could slide Stroman, you know, into that 4th spot, or even the new guy into the 4th
Louis
spot.
Heel, yeah.
Yeah, the Yankees scare me. I think the Dodgers, if they get a little bit more starting pitching, that lineup is so good. And you can't rule out the Orioles. They're really, really good. So I think the cream has really risen to the top. There's such a disparity between the good teams and the bad teams. I mean, if you look at our game today, what really bothers me is you can go into Oakland, Anaheim, Miami, Colorado, and I'm probably
Chicago,
the White Sox. There's 5 teams. And if you look at some of these teams' schedules, they're playing all those teams in the second half.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of easy wins out there. And listen, the game's not easy, I get it, but the Rockies are terrible.
Yeah.
The White Sox are terrible. The A's are terrible. You play them, if you play them 15 times, you should win 12 of those games. So there's a lot of easy wins out there for a lot of teams coming down the pike. And I don't know if that's good for our game or bad, but you conceivably have 4 teams that are going to lose 100 games this year.
Well, listen, you've educated, informed, and enlightened me once again.
I kept you up is what I've done.
Oh, no, man. It's great. No, now I can't go to sleep because my blood's flowing. The adrenaline's pumping, lower the heart rate. All right, JP. Thanks, man.
Anytime. I'll see you down the road, buddy.